Say your last name for us.
I got it, sure. So it's Battaglino, silent G.
Oh, that's
Silent
If you
G.
forget
Okay.
about the G,
Battaglino.
real G's move in silence like Battaglino. That's
Yeah.
how I remember it.
Yeah.
So yeah, because we know a number of people who have like the very like mystifying
That one's good though.
spellings.
But that one is just like lasagna.
Well, it's like Hanny. Like,
oh yeah,
it's less-
Yazzarelli.
It's Jazzarelli, but
Yeah.
like it doesn't look like that.
No, I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of letters jammed together out of like you had a bunch of letters on the refrigerator and a toddler like arranged
Yeah, you're playing.
them. Yeah,
What's the game everyone's playing? Wordle.
Wordle. I've been playing Wordle.
Everyone's playing Wordle.
Yeah.
Except me. I'm just too stupid.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave that.
I can play Scrabble. You know.
leave that hanging.
I don't know why passwords or word puzzles.
Yeah,
Hate that.
you hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here we are. We have with us. See, I always
Now
think
you're
of
gonna
you
have
as being '70s Big Mike. That's how I think of
Yeah,
you.
70s big is it.
That's the OG. That's the original.
Yeah, you guys were doing this before us in that way, right? I mean, didn't you? You guys had a podcast and the whole thing. This is Michael Battaglino, by the way.
Yes, we did. So we had a podcast. Gosh, so let me back it up. So Justin, he joined the Army in 2013.
Uh-huh.
So the podcast, we would have started that in 2011, and then we continued it a little bit while he was in the Army, and then we kind of stopped posting really anything on 70s Big in 2014 or 2015.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, 70s Big is I've got a bunch of shirts up in the gym from 70s Big, and that's gosh, actually I'm staring at one right now. So as soon as you said that, that parlays very well into the topic we're going to discuss. I cannot even. Yeah.
When did you visit? When did you visit us?
What's that?
When did you visit us? 2012.
2013. So I separated from the Air Force in August of 2013, and then through 70s Big, I had met Ben Claridad,
Yeah.
and I messaged Ben, and I was like, "Hey man, can I come stay and hang out at Midtown and train with you for a week?" He's like, "Yeah, cool. You can just crash with my parents." So this dude that I had never met, and this is strength sports, right? This dude that I had never met, I knew him through the internet. I just crashed in his parents' house in their spare bedroom, and we became great friends. And gosh, Ben is a fascinating dude, and he's gotten into strongman, and it is so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
because
Yeah, he's a great guy.
yeah. But yeah, I came by Midtown, which is now 3rd Street Barbell, right?
Yep.
And I remember, I think the first time, Jim definitely had a camera. Jim was definitely videoing something.
Yeah, I had one
And-
actually permanently attached to my hand for a while. I had to have surgery to get it off, pretty much.
And Mike was walking with his sled, either on social media or texting someone. So you
Probably
were doing
texting.
you were
Probably
like
texting.
this, like while pulling the sled.
Yeah. We would pull a sled forever. I read one Louis Simmons book, and then I just fucking pulled sleds hoping I'd squat 1,000. Never happened.
We all did, okay?
Yeah.
We all were like, all right, well, I'm doing today's reverse band. So even though I bench 250 pounds, I'm thinking I load it up to like 450 and just get a crazy amount of band tension. And I'm like, why is my bench not going up? You know?
I know. And in hindsight, it might not be great for my training, but it probably would be better for my social media if I went back to those methods.
Probably so. Well, they say it's a future method. In some future, in some timeline, maybe someone who resembles you might bench 450 or whatever. But
Yeah, it just looks cool. It does look really cool.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to have questions when you have bands going one way and chains going the other
yeah.
for no reason.
So talk about it. Talk about a disparity, okay? So I pulled 585, I squatted 500, and I think I was benching, God, if I even hit like 245, now I maybe hit like 265, but I was doing conjugate prior to discovering 531, which is probably what I should have been on all along. And then I moved to Wichita Falls, Texas, and I'm in Wichita Falls, Texas, so
Yeah.
the home of
birthplace.
starting strength. Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you can't do any
so,
sixes and no fours.
That was talk about an interesting time. That was a fascinating experience. But through strength sports, I've met so many incredible people. And such like I met you guys, and I've stayed in touch with Jim over the years.
Yep.
Because I've liked so many things that y'all have done, and I've continued to kind of follow this journey. And especially, I mean, I definitely want to come out and visit the gym, but like I was telling Jim before, I love the Third Street Barbell apparel. I mean, it is as comfortable as it appears to be in the pictures. Maybe that's a great tagline right there.
That we've been looking for the tagline and we don't have it yet, but that might creep in. To get to throw a little bit back at you, when you saw me texting, probably just begging for a date, walking the sled, I was super into powerlifting, still probably 22, 23 years old, dug into Louis Simmons, dug into the, super training stuff, all in, even the raw stuff because Dan Green was floating around the time. But I didn't know like the history. And your blog forced me to start Googling all these OGs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, 70s big. I was like, what the hell is that reference? Hairband, or like, what the fuck does that mean? And I started to find Doug, now I can't even think of it now that I'm on the spot.
Doug Young.
Doug fucking Young became my hero. I was like some pictures you see him and he looks more like a Texas dude, but some pictures you see him and he looks like me if I was a badass. Like he's got the beard and like Italian fucking chest. Like the most famous picture, he looks more like an Italian Guido.
Yeah.
But then in videos and stuff, he doesn't quite look that way. But that one picture is so iconic. I was like, I want those titties. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
600-pound raw bench.
No, a freak. Absolute freaks. But yeah, 70s big is such a cool little niche, and even nowadays some of the young guns could probably use your blog back because they're so worried about their calibrated plates and trust me, I love nice equipment, we have nice equipment, but if they just dug into the history of the sport a little bit and respected tradition, training on some Walmart fucking plates for a bit. That I always use even modern day Yuri Belkin, like that fool was like the best deadlifter on the planet for nearly a decade, maybe the best power lifter for 3, 4, 5 years. And when you watch his videos, it literally looks like he's lifting on Russian Walmart plates. I'm like, what are those pieces of shit? And he's training on it daily and then comes to any competition he wants and smashes everybody.
That's crazy.
But that's what I think of when I think of 70s big. I think of fucking Doug Young. I think of you. I think of Walmart Russian plates that these kids need to get a little bit tougher with and not worry about that their, SBDs are one size too fucking big.
I'm not going to get anything out of these.
Do you know where Justin? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with where Justin is at today. Do you know about that? I think Jim might, just based on some posts. That
I don't even know if I know Justin. Do I know Justin?
So Justin Lassick created 70s Big.
Okay.
And then I helped Justin. He wrote a lot of the blog posts, but I would also I facilitated a lot on the website. When Justin went into the military, myself and his friend Jacob, we did that for a couple of years until, Justin, let's see. So he enlisted in 2013 as a Green Beret medic. And then we just hit, this is 2022. So Justin was wounded by an improvised explosive device at the beginning of 2019. So I'm going to mess my date up, but I believe it was March 4th. So Justin stepped on an IED and lost. He's a double below the knee amputee. Wow. But gosh, Justin's journey is one of profound trauma and then post-traumatic growth. And Justin has been very vocal about his mental health challenges. He's been vocal about the mental health challenges within the military community. And just in general, he's just been an advocate for mental health because it's very stigmatized. So when Jim asked me what I wanted to talk about, that was the first thing that came to mind, because even today, I had probably 5 or 6 pretty deep discussions about mental health, and not even thinking about the fact that it's 6 o'clock, Texas time, that I would be talking to you guys about this. But yeah, so Justin, we stay in touch, but Justin is still working through all this. I mean, it's it's a lifelong process, and he's made a lot of, I mean, he has made a lot of progress, but it's a daily, there are daily challenges. I mean, he's been impacted for the rest of his life. His life is just very, very different now than it was before he was wounded. So anyway, I didn't know if you guys had known.
No,
that, so.
I don't know if I've ever met Justin or heard of him. 70's big. I've always just heard through you and meeting you, and then Ben posting your stuff back in the day a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not sure we've crossed paths with Justin, to be honest.
I'm vaguely aware of it. I know what you're talking about. I don't have a relationship with him at all. But
maybe when you come visit, that's your time to reunite with him, and we'll bring him out here too, and maybe we can all chat.
Do you know Sturgill Simpson? Are you familiar with the country music artist Sturgill Simpson?
No. I told you, I know Aretha Franklin and I know Tupac, and then I kind of trickles away from there.
Nothing in between or in any other genre.
So Sturgill Simpson and Justin have become like best friends. Sturgill is a phenomenal country music artist, and I say that not tongue-in-cheek because I'm not a country fan, but I love Sturgill Simpson. He just... I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people sing from the heart, so maybe that's not the right phrase. But the dude is just so genuine. It just seems like someone you'd want to hang out with. But through Justin, being in Walter Reed Hospital, I think it was his mom that reached out to Sturgill, and then Sturgill flew to Walter Reed, and they developed this friendship. And then Justin started touring with Sturgill right before COVID to raise money for the Special Forces Foundation.
Oh, wow.
That's very cool.
Actually, I think the Green Beret, maybe it's the Green Beret Foundation, something close to that. But they raised a lot of money, and they still continue to be really close friends.
That's dope.
That's great. Yeah. That Walter Reed experience, because my son, who is not biologically my son, who was wounded in Afghanistan in 2014, was there for 2.5 years-ish. And I don't think you're prepared when you're in there for the kind of attention that you can get from the outside world, because people really revere what those guys have been through, and they're willing to do all sorts of amazing things for them. My son, who is sitting here running the video for us, stayed with our son, who is not our son, is my younger son's best friend, who is here. And that experience resonates with a lot of people in ways that are hard to describe, and people from the outside experiencing it, coming there, whatever, it's very emotional. It's just a huge like you're being just walked into a wall of emotion, and the courage of the guys trying to rehab, trying to grab as much of their life back as possible. It was, for our kid Will, they put him back together. Like they did limb salvages, and he left with a lot of extra hardware, but all of his limbs. And even there's kind of a dichotomy between the guys who are going to essentially live a life close to what they had before, and those who are not. And and they're actually sort of treated a little differently. He was in a situation where it was a very heroic thing that people found out about. So the way he was treated sort of transcended the difference between what his outcomes were going to be versus the other guys. But I don't know. The point of all this is that the emotion really gets you when you're there.
Well, and even the comment you just said there, and I have no experience on either of yours, but like you said, like there's a group of people that will live physically similar lives that they had before, and some that will physically live lives not as similar as before,
right?
But mentally, something we can't scan and see,
right?
Who knows who's going through what? And I guess that's the first question for you, Mike, is you're part of two. You're part of two. We talk about mental health here all the time, and you're part of two, I would say, whether you want to say stereotypes or groups or communities in strength and in the military. and maybe even add another one, American, that guys aren't allowed to have feels. We're not allowed to have any of these things, and obviously your friend going through an insane experience and him raising money for it and all that's kind of floated in your mind more. How about pre 2019 when your friend went through that? You know, you've been in the military, it sounds like, for a very long time off and on. What's mental health conversations did you have in 2013 with fellow guys in the military or in the gym, or 2016 even? What were those even concepts?
I'll go further back. So let's go back to 2005. So 2005 was the year that I enlisted in the Air Force. So I enlisted and I became an F-15 crew chief. So I was responsible for inspecting the aircraft, changing the oil, the hydraulic fluid, replacing components, and just getting it ready for flight again, launching and recovering the aircraft. And I did that for the first 4 years of my career. I did that at RAF Lakenheath in England. And for those first 4 years, I really struggled, and I didn't have any words to associate with anything that I felt. I don't think the word depression ever crossed my mind. I don't think I didn't know what I didn't know. So there were several blind spots about mental health, and there were just no conversations. I mean, I would go to work. I would work 10 to 12 hours every day. I would come home. I would sleep 6.5 hours. I'd get up and I'd train. And that was my life almost the entire time that I was in England. I deployed twice, once to Qatar and once to Afghanistan for 2 4-month deployments. And then I went on several different tours throughout Europe or several different what we call TDYs for a few weeks at a time throughout Europe and Asia. And it wasn't until I came here to Texas that I kind of started to realize that maybe perhaps I wasn't doing all that great, but I did a great job of kind of maybe masking a lot of the symptoms of my mental health challenges because I was I would pour so much into other things. So I spent a lot of time in the gym. I spent a lot of time going to school, and I never really thought about any of this stuff. I just assumed that this was just kind of the way that you felt. You know, you were angry and tired, and those were just feelings that I had. And I have this kind of like, I have a positive personality and I'm an optimistic person. However, you know, like I told someone the other day, just because, you know, someone carries it well doesn't mean that the load isn't heavy.
Yeah.
Sure. So I got out of the military in 2013, right around the time that I met you guys. And I got out because I had been really struggling with the ups and downs of gaining weight and losing weight for my PT tests. So at the time, the max waist limit was 39 inches. And I always kind of towed that line at about 38. And that was my own choice. I mean, I decided to stay bigger so that I could do, so that I thought I needed to be bigger for powerlifting, for strongman. I mean, I wish I had discovered earlier rather than later that, you know, I could probably be around this size at about 230 and be fine, but didn't know that at the time. So it was like 250, 260, but I was always right on that line. And the amount of anxiety and stress of going up and down and knowing that my career hung in the balance, because at that time, and not to, you know, not to downplay something as serious as getting a DUI, but you'd probably receive a similar punishment, maybe a little bit less, you know, failing a PT test than getting a DUI. Jeez. So it was that you were treated that poorly and kind of, you were like, oh, you gotta fail the PT test, huh? Kind of a piece of crap, aren't you?
That's crazy.
I watch people get treated like that. It's not like that anymore. It just really transitions to, you know, they're thinking about taking care of people a lot better than they ever have been before. So I have to give the DOD and the Air Force credit for that. But at the time, it was just kind of like a one-size-fits-all approach. You fail a PT test, you know, you're getting some paperwork. You fail another one, you might be losing a stripe. You fail a third one, maybe you're getting kicked out. And I watched that happen to someone that, man, talk about mental health challenges. I watched him get separated because of his challenges with the PT test, and then he's been struggling ever since. Yeah. So I actually, it's more than just that. It wasn't just the separating from the military, but he was losing his identity coupled with a substance use disorder. And, you know, he's been unfortunately in and out of rehab about 10 times. And I love the dude. And I hope that, you know, I hope that he's able to work through it, but he's really struggled since then. So just made me think of him. But anyway, how did I get interested in this stuff? So 2015, we were forced to go to what was called resilience training. Okay. So we go to the training and I'm in the back row, and the person up front, what we call the master resilience trainer, they're up front and they go, "Hey, why do you guys think we're here? Like, what are we doing today?" And I watched most of the people in the room just kind of like crap on the training, and they're like, you know, like, people are just too soft these days. You know, you skin your knee, like, let some dirt in it. Come on, we don't need to talk about crap like feelings. Like, we're men, we're dudes, we're in a maintenance career field, we're tough. We don't need this sissy crap.
True.
There was this one gentleman in particular, and I still remember him to this day. He was just he downplayed all we don't need this stuff, you know, kids these days, etc. It got to me, and I do not remember a single word that I said. And I rarely kind of like blank out and go red and I just lost it. Like, I wasn't yelling, but it was a very, very passionate speech about why, you know, had I had some words to capture how I felt and the things that I had gone through, because there were a couple of people in particular in leadership positions when I was in England that really, I mean, I know the word bullying might kind of downplay it, but I don't know how else to describe it other than the person really bullied me and made it very personal, the way that he treated me, or didn't, you know, it was shitty, honestly. Like, you know, he told me that I wasn't worth anything. I would never, you know, you're wasting everyone's time. You suck. And yeah, it was bad. Yeah, not a good experience. But anyway,
would you think that is a little bit a part of the culture? Yeah. So there's some, you know, there's the good-natured ribbon, shall we say, right? So it's, you know, giving people a hard time, because I don't know, in certain communities, strength sports being one of them. For sure.
You know, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of funny to mess with your buddies a little bit, but there's a line, right? And it's when people cross that line, and that line is different for everyone. Okay. But when you cross that line and you don't notice that you've done it with someone, and you don't care.
Yeah. And
you continue to just double down and just beat someone down and beat someone down and beat someone down. And then, worst case scenario, that person doesn't come to work because they killed themselves. And you're like, man, you know, knowing what I know now, a lot of things could have been prevented. But at the time, just some of these behaviors were just tolerated. And you know, I used the phrase the other day, but kind of, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. So people that kind of go and just do whatever they want unchecked because they're successful, they're getting the job done. Oftentimes those toxic leaders, I mean, sometimes we may overutilize that term, but they exist. Okay.
No, for sure.
And sometimes toxic leaders, they perpetuate a culture where people just, no one cares about them. And particularly someone that's, you know, they might not be in a good headspace, and their mental health, they might be at like a breaking point, and someone just constantly berating them every day might put them in a place where, like, you know what, I just don't want to live anymore. I just don't want to be here anymore. And at this point, so I'm 36, and I'm super, super grateful that no one, like, in my closest circle has taken their life. Okay, I'm so grateful for that. However, okay, you move a couple of 1 to 2 rings outside of that circle, and I can't even count on both hands how many people I know that have died by suicide, and it's terrible, and it's always always sad. And you know, if we increase the awareness of kind of you know, suicidal ideations, or someone just noticing when someone is struggling, if we're able to pay attention to those things better, we can save more people. I mean, it's an aspirational goal to shoot for 0 suicides, but really that's what we should be doing to save it, everyone that we can. And yeah, so long story short, okay, so from 2005 to 2015, didn't handle anything. I just kind of ground through it. 2015, I heard about resilience training, and that just kind of kick-started me on this journey, right? So I became a master resilience trainer, and then from there, I happened to become the community support coordinator for our base. So when I did that, I was in charge of the resilience program for the installation for Shepherd Air Force Base. And through that job, I gained so much knowledge and perspective just with the people that I interacted with and the situations that I came upon. And then through the different training courses, some were good, some were incredible, okay, and some were so profound that, like, even today, I shared with a couple of lieutenants. I said, hey, when you get back to your base, this is some training that you really need to find. Okay, it's the best suicide intervention tool in the world, and you are going to encounter some people that are at the point where they're ready to take their life. And if you have these tools, you will likely be in a situation where you can save their life. And we don't talk about saves enough, but I can tell you from someone that has, intervened when someone already had a plan to die by suicide and the person is still here today, I will tell you that it works. Okay. And those are the types of things we have to promote, is talking about, hey, I had a conversation with someone about ending their life and they're still here today. And that's a win. And the world is better for having them still in it. So anyway, said a lot of stuff. I know you asked one question and I went on for about 10 minutes. So go ahead. What questions you got?
You want to maybe define to me, I've never been in the military. I've had friends in many branches and things, what resiliency training is, because from the outside, that sounds to me like it's anti-mental health. When I hear resilience training, I hear toughen up. And I hear rub dirt in it. And obviously that's just the name you guys titled it or whatever. But what is your job then, and what do those courses look like? Suicide for sure. I mean, it's no lack of statistics and knowledge to show that it's the largest percentage is male. The largest percent probably within that is some type of military or PTSD background, or you've been in stuff. Yeah, not proud, but I've been around it. One of my favorite kids I ever coached in basketball took his own life when he was a senior in high school. I coached the kid in the gym every single day, and like you said, like, I don't know what a fucking sign is. I mean, I was only 22 and he's 17, so we're laughing. We're rapping Lil Wayne together, like he had friends. I knew his friends. His friends are good kids. Sometimes, what are you supposed to know? What are you supposed to say? But I know that's another long question. But what is resilience training? And then maybe a little bit of your job, and then we can dive into I couldn't agree more. Seeing signs and talking to somebody, just being a good person, being a real friend, if you have real friends, is step one. But I think the overarching thing is still these cultures. The culture that a men can't have feelings, the culture of not even knowing how to explain your feelings, the culture of bullying versus ripping or whatever you want to call your, talking shit. I'm going to talk shit to you all day. But when you step to the barbell and you're going for a PR, I'm also going to be the first one to cheer for you. Right? Like, I'm going to tell you how much stronger than I am than you all fucking week. But when it's max out time, I also have your back first, right? And so that has always been my balance. And maybe that's not right either. Maybe I do go too hard, and I'm sure I have on some people. But the difference is, like a power position, like you were talking about, leaders, and actually just being straight dicks, and they probably need therapy the most because they don't even know how to be empathetic.
Actually, it doesn't even have to go that hard to see like a problem with the way that at least the military used to approach it. I remember in the late 90s, my best friend was he was a weapons controller or on a AWACS. He, like, sat in front of a screen, whatever. That's all he did.
Played video games?
He essentially played video games. He and his wife were having problems, and then she was pregnant. And I happened to go see him up in Washington, and he's like, "You don't really understand why you're here, but you're here to help me figure out how to deal with this situation." And I said, "Can you not talk to a marriage counselor or something?" Like, I'm not I'm not gifted in any way other than I can listen to you. And he's like, no, I would lose my flight rating if they found out that we were going to a marriage counselor. It's like, there's your career, right?
Yeah. And you should get a bonus.
Yeah.
You should get a fucking bonus for going to therapy. You should get a one on the scoreboard, and this dude's going to get knocked.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was gut wrenching. It's like, I don't know how you're going to get out of this. And I really don't actually know. I think that he just finally came to his senses about it and said, look, I'm going to have to make this work. Yeah. We have to communicate better, but anyway.
Ooh, okay. So a lot to unpack there. You both said, a
lot of things.
said a lot to work through. So first of all, Mike, thank you for sharing that about the young man that you work with. And I will tell you, the only good-ish thing that I've found to share with someone that struggles with, did I do enough? Because that's a question that people regularly ask. And if you Google what to say to them, nothing comes up. Okay.
For sure.
But the answer that I found is you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. And the reality is, when you meet someone in life, the likelihood that you have all of the skills necessary to meet their needs, I mean, in many instances, is not great. Okay, so most of us are not equipped to deal with a situation like that. So all we can do is raise the baseline level of awareness of suicide in general, or of depression, anxiety, mental health. And the only way that we can do that is through open and honest conversations. And that's why I don't shy away from saying the word suicide, because I facilitate suicide alertness for everyone. It's a program called Safe Talk. And in that program, they teach us, and this is research backed, they teach us that 1 in 20 people in a given 2-week period have thoughts of suicide. And that's not saying that they're definitely going to kill themselves and they have a plan. That's saying that thought has crossed their mind. So it is natural, okay, for someone to consider, what would the world be like without me? Okay. A lot of us throughout our lives are going to wrestle with those sort of existential questions. However, where it becomes really serious and what we need to intervene is when they have a plan to do so. Okay. And when they have struggled for so long and haven't gotten the help that they need, that's when it is really, really serious. So there's a spectrum for all this, but it's very serious when someone says they have a plan. This is the day, this is what I'm going to do, etc. So resilience training is a way of putting all of these tools and skills together to where we can say that this person, we're helping them bounce back, because that's what we're trying to teach with resilience training. We're trying to help them bounce back, because the way that I tee up resilience training is that life is like a roller coaster. Okay. We would all love to have the best days ever. Everything is awesome. We're grateful. We have a roof overhead, food in our bellies, and people that love us around us at all times. But the reality of life is that, okay, I'm going to throw out a quote here, and one of you are going to get it without question, but everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So who said that?
Is that Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson, yeah.
Mike Tyson. So I share that with young airmen sometimes, and they're like, who? Now they still know Mike Tyson, but they don't know they don't know the real Mike Tyson. Okay, yeah. The Mike Tyson that you were like, man, that dude's a hell of a boxer. But anyway, I tell the airmen that, look, we're gonna have the highest of highs in our lives, but we're gonna have some rough days, and we don't want to compare situations. But some of us are going to encounter situations in our lives that we weren't prepared for. Okay, so some of us are going to experience out of order deaths. So, we in general, our children do not die before us. So that is an out of order life event. Okay, and man, we suck as a species in helping others navigate those profoundly traumatizing points in their lives, because you don't know what to say. And in reality, it's not necessarily what you say, it's you being there. Okay. So let's say your best friend in the world loses a child. Okay. And which is just profoundly hard. Okay. And you want to say something. You're like, I want to say, what do I say? You don't have to say anything. Put a hand on the shoulder, let them cry, and just hold them and tell them that you love them. Okay. And let them be angry. Let them say whatever they want. Just give them the space to do that. But we think, okay, and a lot of times dudes are fixers, that we need to say something or that we need to fix it for them.
Yeah.
But really, if you start to study grief, the best thing you can do is not try to fix it. The best thing you can do is just be there for them. And maybe when the time comes, you can share some grief tools. Like I'm really into David Kessler and Megan Devine. They've done a lot of research on grief. And I think they've got some wonderful things to help people that are grieving. But resilient skills are just, they're things like gratitude. Okay, so learning how to develop a great gratitude practice. So talking with your spouse, significant other, kids about the things that went well in the day. Letting people know, hey, an example of a gratitude practice, right? I'm very grateful to both of you for giving me the platform to do this. Give me the opportunity to do that. So just expressing gratitude is something that we don't do it that often. You know, we text a lot, maybe we make some phone calls, but the face-to-face, the interactions of like, hey, I'm grateful for you and what you have done to help me get to where I am today. Like, how often do we say that?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, say that to your best friend today and see what they're like. Huh? Me? But we teach gratitude. We teach things like mindfulness. So there are some mindfulness activities, but also just the idea of being present. Really, really hard. Really, really hard for me. My mind is always running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I've always got to be doing something. So as an example, me being mindful is just me just hanging out with my daughter just for a few minutes while she eats a popsicle next to my truck. It's super hot out. Popsicles is dripping everywhere. And I was just in that moment. And I'm like, man, I wasn't thinking about the podcast tonight. I wasn't thinking about any more work that I had to do. All I was thinking about was, man, this freaking kid, she's amazing. And I'm just watching, like, she's just trying to eat the popsicle as pieces of it are falling on the ground. So we teach mindfulness. We teach values-based goals. So figuring out what your values are by doing a value survey, and then how to create goals associated with those values. And these are things that I sure as hell didn't know them. As a brand new airman, I was just like, okay, I do my job and I go home at some point. And then periodically they feed me. You know, I was kind of like I was going to say a gremlin, but more like a mogwai. You know, like I take care of a tiny creature that's like, okay, do the thing. Okay. But we give them those skills as, foundational knowledge for what they're going to experience throughout their lives and throughout their careers. Because every time and I'll share an example, and I'll keep it pretty generic because, I want to respect this young lady's privacy, but I facilitated this training at one point, and probably it was towards the end, so about 2 hours in, and really all I talked about was gratitude, values-based goals, bringing your strengths, so how to kind of like bring your authentic self to work, and how to show up at work where you could maximize what you can give to the team because they let you. Okay. So that's all I talked about. Nothing super profound. I just created a space where we could have a conversation about this. You know, there wasn't like a power differential. It wasn't I'm a facilitator and they're the student receiving the material. It was just a collaborative environment. And by the end of that session, she shared with me that, you know, she had been through something what I would call probably unusual, makes it sound a little pejorative, but she had lost her best friend. Her best friend had died in front of her when she was a kid. Okay, so her best friend put a gun to her head that she didn't think was loaded and took her life. Okay, and in my mind, right, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, okay, so the first thing I think of is like, fix your face. Okay, so I don't want to be like, okay, I want to let her know that, I'm receiving this information, but she can share this with me. So someone shares something like that with me, I'm like, I'm so sorry that you experienced that so young in life, but I'm grateful that you shared that with us today. Thank you for that. Okay, and then we had a conversation about how that kind of affected her, because that's going to affect you. I mean, if you're a kid and you see that, that changes you. Okay, that shakes you to your core, and how it affects you, there's no real telling, but it's going to do something. Okay, so we talked about it, and then at the end of that conversation, I shared with her, hey, if you don't feel like you fully worked through this, that's okay. They have some great methods now, something like EMDR that psychologists and licensed counselors can utilize to help you work through those traumatic situations. And that's maybe something you should look into. And she said, well, I don't know if I can go to mental health, won't that end my career? And I was like, yeah, there's a big stigma towards that. Okay. So people think they go to mental health, they're going to end their career. Statistically speaking, it's not true. Now, there are some diagnoses that you might not be able to stay in the military with, but in general, so depression, anxiety, those that are statistically more common, you can continue to serve in the military. And had a great connection with her, and I was confident that she was going to go and get the help that she needed to work through that. But all I could do was create this space where she was willing to share that, and then once I got that information, go, okay, how do I turn this into a teachable opportunity for the entire class, and then also get her the help that she needs? And that's the type of stuff that I never would have thought 17 years ago when I first joined the Air Force that I ever would have had conversations about. So, I don't know. I think I remember your original question, but
no. You gave a good idea of what resiliency training is. Compared to just the name, to me sounds different, and I assumed it wasn't what I thought. You know what I mean? Like being resilient to me means like you toughen out, put your fucking chest out, kid.
I think that when you encounter people in your like regular life, I mean, obviously this is part of your professional life, but who are depressed and potentially talking about suicide, or you sense that there's something very, very wrong. I think that like we all have a sense of wanting to do something about it and are not sure, and there's a lot of apprehension around, am I going to say or do the wrong thing?
Yeah.
And then what you said about being a fixer too, that's a huge overriding thing. Just wanting to fix it. Like stop. I want you to stop feeling that way. How can I get you to stop feeling that way? Because the fact that you're feeling that way is making me uncomfortable, and I don't know how to interact with you.
Or if you really do want to help, like very few things in life is helping a passive act.
Yeah.
If you're cleaning, I have to go help you physically clean to help you. Yeah. Right? But in these cases, maybe being a little more passive and just kind of creating space, like you said. I don't want to switch gears.
So Jim said that was perfect. So what Jim said was perfect, though. He said, you're making me feel like uncomfortable and like I need to fix something. So what you can do in those situations, because in your gut, right, especially when you first start having conversations in this way, in your gut, you're like, oh, I just want to tell them, like, it's going to be okay. Look at how much you have in your life. There's so much to live for. But when we do that, it's not about them anymore. It's about us and how we feel.
For sure. Okay?
So the focus, if we keep the spotlight on them and how we can support them, that helps me kind of cage my reactions and the next things that are going to come out of my mouth, because I've gotten better about even just a 1 to 3 second, what we call a pregnant pause, when you're just like, you just sit with it. It's uncomfortable at first, but once you get good at it, then you're like, okay, I'm thinking this, and then you say exactly what you intend to say, versus the first thing that comes to my mind is, oh man, okay, all right, so you have plenty to live for, everyone loves you, I love you, okay, but at that point it's no longer about them, it's about you. So it's hard, and I will tell you that this transcends the personal and professional life, because I do this everywhere. Like I'm always attuned to I hate to phrase it like this, maybe I don't hate to phrase it like this, but I'm an empath. So I'm pretty attuned to people that are suffering or people that are hurting, okay? Mm-hmm. So I have a friend that's really, actually within the past couple of weeks, a few people that are very close to me have gone through a lot of stuff, okay? And it's just the season of life that I'm at. So I'm 36, so between 35 and 40, you're having kids, you're maybe, you're thinking about, is this the right career for me? you're potentially getting divorced. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in that window. So I just have some friends that are in that season of life. And one of them that I'm very close with, you know, shared kind of the things that he's struggling with right now. And very quickly, okay, I said, hey, you know who I am, you know how I am, and you know that I'm concerned about you taking your life. So I'm just going to ask you, are you thinking about killing yourself? And I said it just like that. And he said, no, I appreciate you asking me. I'm not, I'm really hurting right now. I said, okay, where do we go from here? And he shared with me what he wanted to do. And I kind of gave my 2 cents about, okay, I think, you know, talking to a clinical psychologist would be really helpful. So he chose to do that. But I am who I am all the time, right? So the Mike that shows up to work is the same Mike that shows up at home, the same Mike that shows up to the gym, to competitions. You know, because even I don't remember at some point as I was thinking about this podcast and I was thinking about the conversation I was going to have with you guys. So you both been around strength sports for a long time. You both been around, I mean, Jim, you've been around life a little longer than Mike and I have, but you've both seen a lot and done a lot, okay?
Right.
But you do not remember if Joe Schmo pulled 600 or 725 in a meet, okay?
No.
But you remember every single person that was an asshole, okay? Yeah. Or every person that was like, damn, that he or she was such a good person.
Yeah.
Like the first time I met him, I'm like, you ever met Kai Green?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I met Kai Green, I was just like, hey, man, I'm a big fan of you and your message. And he just looked, he's like, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. I was like, man, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
But the type of stuff that sticks with you. So I say all that to say the way that I show up is the way that I show up all the time, because I want to have open and authentic conversations with everyone. Like I competed last weekend. I'm in between events. And I'm having a conversation with another guy. He was in my weight class. He was 2 years older than me, and he's got 2 kids, one slightly older than my daughter. And we were talking about like the struggles of trying to navigate training around being a good parent, okay? Because it's going to require some degree of sacrifice on some end to continue to strength train, especially if you want to compete at a high level. But I don't want to not pay attention to my family, okay? And that's something that I'm very cognizant of, because especially last year, I put myself in a really bad position where I was training so hard and pouring so much into it that I didn't enjoy it anymore. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And it wasn't until really earlier this year, maybe a little bit later last year, that I started to enjoy myself again, because otherwise I'm like, what the hell am I even doing?
Yeah.
And that requires a level of, I mean, I have to do a fair amount of introspection and thinking about if I'm really living my values. But that's all stuff that I built on from when I first went to that resilience training and started to really think about mental health and just being a good human, which is something that one of my friends, she's a mental health practitioner. That's her phrase, just be a good human. When she was a commander, that's her motto for a unit, just be a good human, just be good to people. So I said a fair amount of things there.
No, you're good.
What do you all want to? Yeah.
I want to go because all this is very important, and it is, but it's so extreme, and it's sad how extreme of suicide in the military and losing friends, or all these things, and they're I don't want to say common, but they're not uncommon. And so that sucks. But let's talk like more every single day. And this is when Jim said you wanted to talk about mental health stuff. This is what I thought about.
Yeah.
And back to like the macho man thing, or the military, we're fucking deadlifting 500 pounds. And a pet peeve of mine, because I have been to therapy on and off for 25 years, are these guys that say, oh, well, the gym is my therapy. Yeah. But they don't say it like that. They say it in like a metal singer's voice, but I just didn't want to make fun of them as bad as I'm about to anyways,
It's my therapy.
Yeah. If that's in your caption of Instagram, you're probably on the wrong podcast. Just go somewhere fucking else. Jokes aside, you're welcome here. But
But we're trying to soften that a little bit here, so hang on.
Well, I just don't get it, right? Like, what is it about, like, physical exertion? I mean, that's compartmentalizing, right? Like, literally the definition of, if you're, or even you said, you're like, people are so busy, and you're before whatever year you said about 2005 and stuff, you're like, oh, I just went to work and I stayed busy, and I just thought, well, everyone stays busy, so I didn't think about my feelings. I knew I was kind of stressed and sad, but I didn't have time to think about it or take the time. And in the military, it is probably a little bit different. Again, I have no experience there, but like every day, like, therapy's generally affordable. It is a bit of a luxury, and it costs some money, and depending on where you work, it may not be covered and stuff. But why is it so, taboo is probably a little extreme of a word, but why is it so uncommon?
No, taboo, yeah.
Why is it so uncommon for men to go or want to go, and to think that pulling on a metal rod will fix what's going on between my ears?
Yeah.
Like, where's that connection even begin?
Well, before we jump all the way into that, I want to say that there are people who have, like, proprioceptive differences than the rest of us. And the deep joint stimulation of lifting weights does calm their minds. And it's not so much a situation of mental health. It's like a physical feedback thing that makes them feel better. For sure. So those people they got the pass.
No. I think moving your body should be a baseline and a percentage of our overall health. Yeah, for sure. If you sit on a couch all day and just watch murder mysteries, your mental health's not going to be great.
No.
You could watch some murder mysteries, go for a walk, your mental health's going to be slightly better, but it's definitely not your therapy.
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it back on you guys with a question, okay? So I want you to think about two different people in your mind, okay? I want you to think about a person that you've trained with, that you enjoy being around them. You know, you train together. If they're having a bad day, they come in, you smash some bench and deadlifts, and you just enjoy being around them. And afterwards, they're like, you know what? Feel a little bit better now. I got rid of that stress. Okay. I also want you to think about a person that you've trained with, and they're not in a great mood, or maybe they're really fired up about that training session. They come in for that bench and that deadlift, and they leave after not having a great session, and it is not good news for anyone. Okay. So
you hope they're walking home.
They don't talk to anyone for 48 hours. They're just not in a good place. Their identity is so strongly tied to their performance in the gym that they are perhaps ruining other aspects of their lives. Okay. So their relationships, they're not going to work. So do you have kind of an image of those two people in your mind?
Indelible, yeah.
So those are kind of some extremes, right? But the reality, at least in my mind, and I'm confident that the research backs this up, is that strength training can and should be something that makes our lives better. So we're able to relieve some stress. We're able to become more physically resilient. We're less apt to be sick. We improve our cardiovascular function. There are so many wonderful things that we can gain from strength training. However, okay, the other side of that coin is that, and I've fallen into this myself, and I'm not even competing at that world-class level. But when you become so tied to the amount of weight that you put on the bar, that everything in your life, so you've got the sponsors, maybe you met your spouse through the gym, you don't see anything beyond that next total, or the total in 6 months from now. I mean, you're willing to sacrifice anything and everything, and not really think about the consequences of those things. And I will say that, and Mike, I know you're a huge basketball fan, okay? There is you put a tremendous amount of sacrifice into being like MJ, okay, or LeBron or Kobe,
sure.
Okay? You do. I mean, there's no question. And I'm not going to cast shade on any of them, okay? Because we make our bed, okay, and then we lie in it. So
but who's to say any of them have great mental health?
So I say all that to say, I don't think a lot of those folks that maybe we had in mind on the extreme of that one bad session ruins the next week of their life. I don't think they're looking in the mirror reflecting on how their mental health is maybe suffering, okay, and how they may be making their mental health challenges worse. They may have already been living with depression, but it could be making their depression worse because they feel like they are no longer worthy if they are not performing. Right. And I know this will resonate with both of you, but who do you have to worry about? You worry about the elite level athlete the day after they retire.
Yeah.
Because they look in the mirror and they're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And those that have kind of like a mission post sports career, they tend to be better off because they find a way to live their values. But those that don't can really struggle. And they can struggle to the extreme of dying by suicide. And that's, I think it's incumbent on the rest of us around just everyone in our lives to just pay attention to the mental health of the people that you love the most. And I think the way that we do that is we notice, we have a good sense of, do you guys have a good sense of the people that you're around, how they are, okay, how they are in the morning, how they are at night, how they are in the gym. So like if Jim were to just be completely different tomorrow, Mike.
Yeah.
I would say that a way that you can check in with his mental health is to just say something like, hey, Jim, I noticed this morning, like we saw each other and you didn't say good morning. Like you always say good morning. We've known each other for years. You've never done that. Like, what's going on? And you display that genuine concern to where Jim's like, I'm not doing so good, Mike.
Yeah.
And then you have that conversation about what's going on. But the problem is many of us, because we don't know the exact thing to say, we're like, I don't want to ask Jim. It's kind of his business. I don't want to pry too much. But you love Jim, okay? He's your friend. You care about him. In order to demonstrate the love you have for him in that relationship, you ask him like, hey, man, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And when you do that and you model those behaviors, the people around you start to do that. So today is an example, right? So not to get too personal, but I'll just jump right into it. So I got some blood work back from the VA, and I've got some elevated liver enzymes, and I'm probably gonna mess up the name. So I have hereditary hematochromosis, I think. So it's something that has to do with how I absorb iron. And I've been waiting on my blood work to come back because my last blood panel wasn't great. So I've been waiting this blood work to come back, and I had about 3 friends that I shared this with. In the past, I'm like, hey guys, nothing to worry about, but I've got some kind of my blood work wasn't great, and I get my blood checked by the VA twice a year. And they're like, okay, how even a couple weeks ago, like, how are you doing with this? I'm like, okay, like I'm doing all right, but I really want to know what's going on. So today, I sent them the diagnosis, and I said, hey, here's what's going on. No intervention needed at this time. They still want to do an ultrasound of my liver to make sure my liver's not having any issues, but we're okay for now, just more regular blood work. And they're like, hey, thanks for sharing. How are you doing with this? And these are the types of questions that I feel like I've modeled to them before, and I've developed a rapport with them that they not only want to know or want to share, like, hey man, like, thanks for sharing with me, but they go, how are you doing with this? And that's something that I would offer that most of the people that I interact with in life probably wouldn't do that or wouldn't know how to show up in those situations. But the closest people in my life know to just ask, like, I know you go through stuff and you carry it real well, but I just want to know, like, how are you doing with this? And my wife did the same thing. And we communicate really well now. We've been working on it for years. Like most couples are hopefully continue to work on communication because it's gosh, probably the number one ender of relationships. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that. But even she said, well, how are you doing with this? And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I'm not dying, which is good. But, you know, it's just something that, you know, it is something else I was diagnosed with. And now I'm going to have to, you know, pay attention to these things because I still want to be here. Right. So I still want to be able to raise my daughter and then advocate for mental health, things that I'm passionate about, strength. That's why I'm in my gym. So yeah, at some point we had started to touch on, you know, what do we do in these day-to-day situations? But this is just a day in my life where, because I'm authentic with my friends and I genuinely express like, hey, I know you're struggling with this thing. I'm just checking in. How's it going? Okay. Oftentimes we don't do those things because we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't know what to say, but you start trying a little bit, you express some vulnerability. Okay. Maybe you screw up a couple times and you don't ask the right question, and that's okay. But, you know, I have found that something as innocuous as, hey, checking in, what's up? What's going on? That checking in, just for whatever reason, it resonates really well with the men in my life that I check in on. And women I check in on too. It just, I don't know. It's very like, you know, hey, what's up? What's going on? It's a little more prodding than
how was your day?
But,
or how was your day? Yeah,
exactly. That's
yeah, I have a couple friends that's the text. Yeah. That's the normal text. It's not a hello. It's a like a checking in, more of a checking in text. Yeah. What I wonder though, and you know, I have no training in this world other than my own experiences with therapy and going through more deaths than I want to count with my mom and loved ones and who knows what. But to me, a lot of that I think is great and hard. It's really hard. But we're still like step one to me is still self-awareness, because like you, if we go back in time in 2005, even if someone told you to check in your friends and say, "Yo, what's up? You good?" You wouldn't even know how or when to do that, because you don't even know how or when you're sad. And if I don't know what would make me fucked up, then how would I supposed to know what would make Jim fucked? You can't be empathetic if you don't feel your own feels. Right? It's like you don't know what you don't know, which I think someone said earlier this evening. So, like, to me, because then same thing. And, like, I'm just lucky enough that, or unlucky enough that I was an angry kid. My parents sent me to therapy, so I got to learn some of these things firsthand. And I think therapy, for those that, I mean, sure, you can go to yoga. Sure, you could go to some weekend whatever. Sure, you can meditate. But for me, therapy forces you to be self-aware, because even a decent therapist is going to ask you these weird questions, and you're going to have to sit there for an hour and be like, I don't know how I felt when blah, blah, blah happened, or when so-and-so blah, 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 you know? And so where does that sit in the military maybe? Where does that sit in your advice? And then maybe what's some of your experience on that? Because that's like, I think me and Jim are on the same page as this. That's like our main... what we advocate here, because again, we're not licensed in any fucking therapy things. No. We don't know shit, but we do know how we've benefited from talking to someone. And yeah, talking to a friend could be similar in some instances, but again, if you don't know when you're fucked up or when you need help, it's hard to check in on someone or receive the same, you know?
Those are really good questions. And I would say that, you know, it kind of varies when you start to develop these skills, because
some people never do.
You know, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with adverse childhood experiences. So what we call ACEs. So adverse childhood experiences, so different things that can happen to a child that tremendously impact their development. You know, they tend to kind of they build upon one another, and then at a point when they kind of enter adulthood, sometimes a lot of trauma has occurred in the beginning of an individual's life, and it sometimes requires like an intervention of a counselor, or it sometimes requires maybe the intervention of someone that just cares, and perhaps that person just never had anyone that cared about them until you. You know, let's say it's someone that shows up to your gym and they're 18 years old and they're kind of like standoffish and they're looking around, and Mike's doing some deadlifts because Mike's always deadlifting.
That's all we really do anymore.
So, he looks over and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm just checking it out." And you can tell like they don't want to be there, but there's something that drew them in. So you just being a good human to them, be like, "You want to work out?" And they're like, "I guess, but I don't know what I'm doing." So you just saying like, "I'll show you." You just displaying that kind, something as simple as kindness to that other person. They're like, "Okay," like an adult being nice to me, like, okay. So you can help people grow, okay, and experience post-traumatic growth. And yes, there's still that post-traumatic stress, but you can help them work through it, in the non-clinical sense, just being kind to someone else. Yeah. And you eventually get to a point that you just kind of sense that you meet someone, and within maybe an hour of spending time around them, you can kind of tell that they just haven't been treated all that well in their life. And, sometimes I get it. Like, not everyone is going to be your best friend. Okay. And sometimes people are just, I don't know, you just like don't, you
fucking
just
annoying.
Immediately, click, right?
Yeah, they're fucking annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah. So even in those cases, I just think I go back to the fact that every single human is worthy of dignity and respect. Okay. And we're not going to go to the profound extremes right now of like in war. Okay. But every single person that you're going to interact with on the street is worthy of dignity and respect.
For sure.
And if you operate with that in mind, when you see that someone is genuinely struggling with anything, like someone drops a bunch of stuff in the store and you're like, "Hey, let me help you out." And all right, I'll jump to an example. Okay. All right. A few weeks ago, I do this reading program, and I read to this second grader. Super cool kid. He loves Takis, okay, the chips, and I bring him Takis. And as long as I bring him Takis, he reads with me. So I bring him Takis, we read, and as I'm walking out, there's a lady holding her son over her shoulder. And he looks kind of like he's passed out, okay, like he's just asleep. And I open up the door. I'm like, "Hey, let me get the door for you." And I open the door for her, and I was like, "Oh man, he's tuckered, huh?" And she goes, he just had a seizure. He has epilepsy." And in my mind, I'm like, "Oh shit." But I was like, "Oh man, is there anything I can do to help you?" And I helped her get to her car, and we got her son situated, and she had a couple other kids with her in the car. But I just looked at this woman, and I'm like, man, she's in the middle of her workday, and she gets called out. She's got to go pick up her kid because they just had a seizure. And what I can offer her in that moment is I can hold two doors for her and let her know, like, "Hey, I hope you have a good day." Because, I'm thinking about the stuff that went on in my day. And again, I'm not trying to do the comparison thing, but I'm thinking like, look at what she's carrying right now. And do people see that, or do they just walk by her?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we just walk by things like that because they make us feel uncomfortable. We don't know what to do in that situation. So we see someone in a wheelchair, you're like, do I hold the door for them? Like, is that the right thing to do? And I would say that in most instances, just lean in and just try to help people. And I think this displaying that sort of authenticity and modeling the behaviors you want to see out of other people, that sort of stuff just spreads, and other people start. I think it's not going to solve all the problems in the world. Okay, there's a lot of problems to solve, but I think we can make some headway if we do things like that, and if we just, we lean in a little bit more, and we're just vulnerable, and we're like, you know what, I don't know what's going on with this person right now, but I'm just going to go talk to him. I'm just going to go say, hey. And that's why I see someone sitting by themselves, because I was once that kid, right? So you see someone sitting by themselves at like a social gathering, everyone's gotten to their assigned clique, okay? And then there's that one person, they're by themselves, and you're just like, You have no idea the type of impact you can have on someone's life just by doing something like that. Okay, because they could go home to their family and be like, someone sat with me today. Like, it was so cool. I had a conversation with someone. And then they're more willing to get out of their shell a little bit and start talking to people, because they're like, you know what? There are nice people out there. That Mike or that Jim guy, like, they were really nice. So, yeah. Maybe that's a little more actionable. I don't know.
No,
what
it's
what
good.
Are you thinking?
Yeah, no, all of it's good.
A thing that I've discovered in the last couple of years is, we talk about trauma, that trauma is very individual. There are traumas that all of us can say, oh, that's horrible. That's a terrible thing for someone to experience. And then there are other things that don't on their surface look terrible, but it's the impact that it has on the person. And I think that as humans, we tend to be a little on the judgmental side. And I think, if something happens to someone and they react a lot, and you think, well, that's not that big a deal. Like, why are they so upset about it? It's like, well, it's because it's harder for them. Like, there's a part of it that you can't see. You don't understand what their background was or what their temperament is in general, and you just don't know why it's impacting them the way it is. And we get into that, oh, they're just a weak person kind of judgmental thing. And it just is. It doesn't pay to go there, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
You want to go? You want to go deep with this one? How deep you want to go?
Let's go.
All right. So hopefully I don't screw this number up, but the number of women that are sexually assaulted in college is significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's still happening to this day. I don't know if the number is 1 in 5, but it's a lot. Okay. So I say all that to say that not everyone is impacted by sexual assault in the same way, and we need to be mindful of those things. Okay, even though that statistic is significant, and a lot of women go through that, we need to be mindful that we don't treat everyone the exact same way. We treat them the way that they need to be treated.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the golden rule is treat everyone like you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat everyone how they want to be treated. So we have to create a culture, okay, where when something as profoundly traumatizing as sexual assault, we need to let people know that we will get them what they need when they need it, okay? Because sexual trauma in particular doesn't always manifest with symptoms the next day, the next week, the next year, etc. It could be several years before that woman or man, because men are sexually assaulted as well, not as many statistically, but sexual assault against men or against males is also very underreported.
Yeah.
Because of the stigma, and because men may not seek help because they don't want to appear weak. Okay, and that's a cultural issue again. But we need to get people what they need, okay, when they need it. So that's why, when people we can talk about something like Me Too, okay? And there were people, and I interacted with people that are like, man, that happened so long ago. Like, why are you worried about it? Like, look, I hope that you've never experienced something as traumatizing as sexual assault, but that is something that most individuals will need to work through at some point through their lives. Okay, so likely with a clinician. Okay, and we need to afford them the opportunity to do that. However, there's so much, and Harvey Weinstein is a perfect example. Okay, people would go, well, why didn't any of these women speak up before? Okay, well, they didn't, because the consequences of that would be maybe they never get to work in Hollywood again.
Right.
Okay, so not only have they been traumatized and assaulted by someone as sick and sadistic as Harvey Weinstein, okay, then they lose their livelihood. So there's a secondary loss to that. So I'm very cognizant that empathy is something that we need to harness, because it really is like a superpower. Okay, if we can just for a moment put ourselves into someone else's shoes and think about, man, how could that potentially affect me we afford a little more grace to others because we go like, you know what? I never want to go through something like that, but I want to help that person that's going through that right now. So I don't know. Does that what do you think, Jim?
I know that was good. I think you in my mind, you put the thesis statement on the whole episode, and that's that empathy is a superpower. That's really all of what we've been talking about, and being able to empathize with another person's situation and give them space to share whatever they're comfortable sharing and help them in whatever way that you can.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to stumble over this for a second here, but sometimes when you reach out to the person and say, hey, are you cool? Everything good? What's up? Whatever. You really don't get it. You really don't get the real answer. You get, you get a facade of whatever. And most of the time they can tell that you're not buying it, but they don't have anything else to give you.
Yeah.
And those are difficult situations, but if you've done the best you can, at least you can like sleep at night, kind of,
Yeah, and maybe just not stop too, so you can check in next week as well.
So those are deposits, right? Okay, so those are deposits into like a relationship piggy bank.
Yeah.
So every time you check in, every time you let them know I'm there, I care, every time you do those things, you are making a deposit into that relationship. And eventually they might get to the point where they're like, you know what? I've been bullshitting Jim for a while. I know he ain't buying it anymore. I'm finally going to tell Jim what's really going on with me. Okay. So, I think that's the way so even if you don't get the answer that you really want, you're like, I know you're lying to me. Even if you don't get it, there's a potential that down the road, you might get it from them.
Yeah. Well, I think we could talk the rest of the day, but
for sure.
But we probably shouldn't. What we should probably do is say we will have you back, and we'll dig in. Sometimes stuff happens in the world that we want to talk about that has this slant, and we're just speaking from our own experience and not in a way that really helps people figure out how to navigate those situations.
Yeah, I don't know how to navigate it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, just do my best.
So anyway, thanks so much for being with us today. How can people find you?
How can people find me? Probably the only way these days is Dr. Mike Battaglino on the old Instagram. Yeah. Now, funny little story about why I got my doctorate. So I got my doctorate in education. I finished a little over a year ago. I'm very passionate about education. I like education research, and I'm in the education space. So I felt like getting a terminal degree in education made sense. But there was a secondary reason that I got my doctorate, and that was I really love the line in Happy Gilmore. Okay, so Happy gets hit by the Volkswagen Beetle, and he's got to get the doctor comes up to him. He's like, "You cannot go back out there," and he's just like, "I'm playing." He's like, "What do I know? I'm just a doctor." So that line right there. Okay, I can't tell you how often I use it just in training sessions, and someone on my team is like, I don't know if I should go up another 20 pounds. I was like, go up another 20 pounds. And like, you think I'm like, I'm just a doctor. So
a little spin on the white coat bias.
I'm not serious. I don't take myself that seriously. But I really did have it in my mind that someday, okay, maybe even like an important meeting, the general's there, and they're like, Mike, I don't know about that statistic. Do you think that's right? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a doctor. What do I know?
You got to whip it out somewhere. Yeah.
That's great.
It's fun.
That's awesome. Mikey.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. Brand new episodes every Wednesday and Friday. Connect with us. We'd love to hear your feedback on some of the latest guests and some episodes. 50percentfacts.com. There's a link to our Discord. We're hanging out there, chatting some giveaways, exclusives, which leads me to the next point, 3sb.co, our apparel. Check it out. In the Discord, we talk lifting, life. I don't even know what. I was talking to Mess today about test boosters or who knows what we're talking about. But we're giving away free giveaways, exclusives, and first looks at all our clothes. Check that out. I'm Silent Mike everywhere you want to find me.
I am at the Jim McD and all the social media. This show is 50% facts, where percent is a word and 50 is just numbers. And we'll talk to you next week. Actually, no, wait. This is a Wednesday episode, so we'll talk to you on Friday. All right.
All right, see you Friday.
All right. Thanks again, Mike.